subscribe.
"178 Valence Road was a terraced house with 2 rooms, a kitchen and a scullery downstairs, and an outside loo. Upstairs there were 3 rooms, and out of 2 of them we could see the trains thundering along a raised track between Liverpool Street and Bethnal Green stations. When we moved in, late that summer of 1939, it was just a humble East End house, but it was not long before Mum made it into a warm, happy and secure home. Mum made sure all our clothes were always the cleanest by washing them every day, and the old man even cleaned and ironed the laces on our boxing boots. Mum didn't come upstairs much except to bring the boys tea and sandwiches, but as long as no one was getting hurt, she didn't mind all the noise and running around. She loved having kids in the house, and the Kray home got a reputation for always being full up. A year later, the twins showed so much promise that I took them to the Robert Browning Institute in Walworth, near the Elephant and Castle in South London. One of the resident trainers watched them in the ring with a look of amazement on his face. "How old did you say they were, Charlie?" he asked. 10, I said. "Are you sure they haven't been in the ring before?" "Absolutely not," I replied proudly. "They're amazing," the trainer said, "bloody amazing." "So you want them in the club?" he asked. "Definitely," I replied. And so the short-lived but sensational career of the young Kray twins was born. Reggie was the skillful boxer. Ronnie was the fighter who never knew when he was beaten. The twins only fought each other once. For 3 2-minute rounds, they were totally absorbed, both committed to winning. They were belting each other so hard and so often that Mum and the old man wanted to get in the ring and stop it, and it was all I could do to restrain them, although the battle got so bloody in the final round that I nearly shouted "stop" myself. The judges found it difficult telling the twins apart in the first part of the fight, but they had no trouble towards the end. Ronnie's face was a mess, and Reggie got a unanimous verdict. Afterwards, in the dressing room, Mum laid into them. She was horrified at the sight of her 2 babies knocking the daylights out of each other, and told them in no uncertain terms that they would never appear together in a boxing ring again as long as she was alive. The twins burst into tears, but they never did fight each other again. As they grew up in the following years, a myth got growing throughout the East End about the twins. They were tough and fearless, and in the tradition of the Wild West, where the fastest guns were always the target of other sharpshooters, they became marked young men in the East End. Hard nuts from neighbouring districts came looking for them in search of fame and glory, wanting to be the people who toppled the Krays. Like the police, they came mob-handed, but they never came back. One evening, Reggie walked into the house at just after 10 at night. I told him Ronnie had left a message saying he was in the Coach and Horses with his friend Pat Butler. It was nearly closing time, and I said it was a bit late to go, but Reggie had a strange feeling he ought to. He left quickly. What happened when he got there became the talk of the East End for months. Ronnie was in the saloon bar with Pat. As Reggie walked in, Ronnie said, "Just in time." He nodded to 9 youths at the other end of the bar. "That little firm are looking for us." A few minutes later, the twins told Pat to make sure he stayed out of the way, then dashed out of the door, as though they were scared. But it was only a ploy to reduce the odds a little. As 4 of the rival gang followed them into the street, the twins doubled back into the saloon, through the public bar, taking the remaining 5 by surprise. It was an almighty battle. Fists flew, chairs were thrown, tables overturned. Although the twins were outnumbered by more than 2 to 1, they floored the whole lot. and when the other 4 ran back in, they knocked them out too. Amazingly, the twins came out of that scrap virtually unscathed, but one of the kids, Bill Donovan, who Ronnie had hit with a chair, was taken to hospital with a badly damaged eye. The twins were very concerned about Bill and asked me to ring the hospital. I pretended to be a relation and asked how he was. A nurse said he was stable, but nobody knew if the eye was going to be permanently damaged. It was a worrying few days. The twins kept telling me to ring, and eventually, to the twins' relief, we learned Donovan was going to be all right. Pat Butler told me later that he was in the street after the fight had ended, and an old man had asked him who the twins were. He'd never seen anything like it. It was like a scene from a Western. One night, a few weeks later, the twins were spotted going into a cafe in Commercial Road. When they came out, they found themselves facing 10 members of the so-called Watney Street gang who, it seemed, were intent on teaching them to stay in Bethnal Green. The twins did not want to risk waiting for the usual preliminaries to a punch-up. They waded into the mob, laying 6 of them out on the pavement. The rest, not fancying the new odds, ran off. Incidents like this built up the legend that the twins were tough guys who went around the East End looking for people to punch. That is far-fetched and unfair. What is true is that they were tasting power for the first time. They had been accustomed to victory in the ring against one opponent, but now they knew they were hard and tough and skillful enough to take on and beat 8 or 9 between them, and they enjoyed the feeling. The Albert Hall was packed that night on the 11th of December, 1951. Tommy McGovern, one of my contemporaries at the Robert Browning Institute, was defending his British light heavyweight championship, and 5 of the other 7 bouts involved Bethnal Green fighters, including the 3 Kray brothers. It was the first time we had appeared on the same bill together, and it was to be the last. In those days, a boxer had really arrived when he appeared at the Albert Hall or Haringey Arena. It had taken me 18 victories in 20 contests. But the twins who had turned pro in July had made it there after just 6 fights and 6 wins. That's still a British boxing record. My appearance almost never happened. I had decided to quit boxing and hadn't been in the ring for several months. But I wanted an extra bit of money for Christmas and agreed to take on an unbeaten Aldgate welterweight called Lou Lazar for 25 quid. We were the first 3 fights on. First, Ronnie lost to a clever boxer from King's Cross named Bill Sliney, whom Reggie had outpointed 2 months before. Sliney was not too keen to continue after a first-round mauling by Ronnie, but he was persuaded to and won a points verdict. Reggie's cool, scientific style earned him an easy points win over Bob Manito of Clapham, and then it was my turn. Unfortunately, it was a night when the deafening cheers of the Bethnal Green faithful could not help me. I'd been out of action too long, and my timing was haywire. My pride got me to my feet after 2 counts of 9 in the first 2 rounds, but a left hook in the guts finished me in the third. I spent some of the 25 quid on a white fur coat for my baby son Gary, who had been born 2 days after the twins turned pro, but it was my last boxing payday. I never put the gloves on in public again, and neither did the twins. My brothers could have made a living out of boxing. They were both above average, particularly Reggie, and I'm sure they could have earned a few bob. I'd seen what boxing in the forces had done for me, and I'd urged them to give it a go in the army when they got called up for national service. But as usual, the twins felt they knew best. When they found themselves back in Civvy Street after being dishonorably discharged, Ronnie had lost interest in fighting, and Reggie used the excuse that he would not get a license because of his army record. He did train with me, though, and the fitter he became, the more he felt he would like to box professionally. Finally, he did apply for his license. However, a previous conviction for assault was on his record, and he was worried it would go against him. Thankfully, the assaulted victim wrote to the boxing board explaining that Reggie's assault was only after much provocation and he should be allowed another chance. That letter swayed the decision in Reggie's favour and he was granted his licence. But within a few months, he had lost all interest in the sport. He felt that all the managers and agents were too ruthless and only wanted to know those fighters who were going to become champions. The irony was that Reggie was good enough to become a champion. I didn't doubt that for one moment, but he didn't like the atmosphere, and that was the end of that. Reggie never went in the ring again, although I believe he knew in his heart that he was good enough. It quickly became clear that the twins were not cut out for a life on the knocker like our dad. I lent them some money, and they did spend several weeks trying to generate some business, but they were always looking for something else. That something else came in the form of a filthy, neglected billiard hall in what had once been a small cinema in Eric Street off the Mile End Road. The takings were low, mainly because the manager preferred playing snooker himself rather than encouraging business. But the twins saw the potential and put a proposition to the owner. They would take over the place, smarten it up, and make it pay. In return, they would give him a weekly cut of the takings. Over the next 18 months, the Regal Billiard Hall became more and more popular. The twins ensured there were no fights or disorders of any kind that might bother the police, and the business still made money. Inevitably, though, it became a meeting place for thieves, where robberies were planned. The twins were never involved, but if any of the pals they helped out had a good tickle, I'm sure the twins made sure their debts were repaid with interest.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please join our Facebook group. It's called Krays Crime Lords of London. We're a friendly moderated group with over 1,000 Kray and other celebrated gangster videos available for view. There's also thousands of images in the photos sections. The link for the group is in the YouTube description section. I hope we see you there soon.
Leave a like and subscribe.